It's important to note here, because there have been so many charges and allegations thrown against Carlos Ghosn, to separate what exactly today's hearing was about. His lawyers had asked the court for a public hearing so they could hear the explanation as to why he has now been detained for 50 days. Now, the initial allegation when he was arrested back on November 19th was that of underreporting his income by $44 million. But that's not what the lawyers are contending or have an issue with today. Since then, he has been rearrested back on December 21st for a breach of trust. And that's where the FX swap issue, as you point out, the FX swap contract comes into play. Now, prosecutors have alleged that he essentially used Nissan as collateral in these FX contracts. What Carlos Ghosn said today was that, look, he wanted a more stability in his income, per se. He wanted to be paid in yen initially, in dollar initially. When he was told he couldn't, he did in fact enter into these FX contracts. Now, what happened, he says, is during the financial crisis, there was a huge tank in the Nissan shares as well as the yen. The yen dropped to 80 against the greenback, and at that point, he says that the bank did ask for additional collateral. He approached Nissan and the board. They agreed to take on that collateral so long as there was no cost to Nissan. And he has said that since then, he has taken back that contract. There has been no cost to Nissan as a result. Now, his lawyers contend that given all the documents that are in place right now, including what the lawyers say are board meetings that prove that there was a trilateral agreement here between Carlos Ghosn, Nissan, as well as the bank, there is no reason to hold him right now. Now, today's hearing doesn't mean that he will be released in any way. At this point, he will be detained until January 11th. That is when the current detention is up for review. But keep in mind the way the legal system here in Japan works is that lawyers or prosecutors, if they want to hold Carlos Ghosn longer, can rearrest him yet again and detain him indefinitely. As it stands, we should point out Carlos Ghosn's statements in court today, a very fiery defense saying he has been wrongly accused and unfairly detained based on meritless and unsubstantiated accusations. Those inside the courtroom say he was visibly, physically different, at least, walking inside with a suit, but a rope around his waist, handcuffed. He was visibly thinner as a result of the 50-day detention. What we're looking for now is for that January 11th deadline here in terms of his current detention. At that point, he will be eligible to call for a bail hearing. The question is whether prosecutors will in fact grant that and whether in fact prosecutors will file additional charges to try and keep him behind bars for a bit longer.
Akiko, some of the lines crossing suggest that lawyers are quite frustrated by the process. One effectively saying that Ghosn's arrest from alleged deeds stretching back to 10 years is odd, so they question the nature of some of the allegations that have been logged, but then also saying they've not had access to the Nissan board minutes regarding the compensation. It sounds like it's been tough going to defend Carlos Ghosn.
It certainly has. The lawyer was very cautious in his wording at that press conference. What he did say, he is a former prosecutor, so he didn't exactly go after the current prosecutors who are looking to prosecute Carlos Ghosn, but he did say that he would like a more careful review of the allegations at hand here. One example he did point to, another allegation that has been put forward here, is that in fact Carlos Ghosn used Nissan money to essentially cover some of his personal financial losses. And then, there's questions about the money that he transferred to a Saudi businessman and whether, in fact, this was him using Nissan money for personal gain. Now, the lawyer today said that, look, prosecutors haven't even interviewed that businessman just yet. And they have serious questions about the extent to which the prosecutors are willing to go to try and plug the holes and questions. Now, we should point out in that press conference, Carlos Ghosn's lawyer was asked whether, in fact, there were other motivating factors here. We've heard the reports of potential coup d'etat at a time when Carlos Ghosn was considering a merger between Nissan and Renault. His lawyer said that, look, he is not in a position to comment on that he does not know the inside workings of Nissan as a corporation, but he did say that he thinks prosecutors need to be a bit more careful in their investigation, which certainly for Ghosn's family members would certainly be an understatement for that.
Akiko, just a couple more lines to bring up that are crossing the wires now. The lawyer for Ghosn says that they will submit an application today to end Ghosn's detention. They also see the possibility that Ghosn will be indicted on the 11th of January, so in a couple of days, and that they will apply for bail when detention period is over. So when can we assume or sort of put in the date in the diary that Ghosn might actually be released from prison or detention? Is that a possibility?
Well, that's a big question mark, because remember, what he's being held for right now is a breach of trust, and that's different than what Greg Kelly, his advisor, who was also arrested on November 19th, was held on. He was granted bail because those charges were different. Now, you point to that January 11th date. That is the next marker that we are looking for. Yes, after that, if prosecutors move forward with that indictment, at that point, Carlos Ghosn can apply for bail. The question is whether he will be granted that. And when you look at the record here in Japan, that's also not necessarily promising for Carlos Ghosn. Just 30% of those requests for bail have been granted in these Japanese cases here. So it's certainly going to be an uphill battle. As for what this all means in the future, well, if this does in fact go to trial, the indication is that this would likely be a trial before 3 judges, because jury trials are very rare here in Japan. An average judge trial by a judge panel, is roughly 13 months. So that suggests there's still a long road ahead for Carlos Ghosn. We should point out, though, Japanese here on the ground, including lawmakers and leaders, very mindful of the backlash that Japan has faced as a result of this case, the attention that has been placed on this very case, in harsh criticism over Japan's very opaque criminal justice system. So that's something else to be watching, whether in fact there could be some pressure on these prosecutors to maybe just back off just a bit, because the indication right now, according to some critics, is that essentially the prosecutors are just buying time right now to try and build that case because they don't have a strong enough case. And the other suggestion from legal analysts have been that prosecutors are trying to buy time at this point to get a confession from Carlos Ghosn. Remember, this is a country that has a 99% conviction rate, and prosecutors can continue to question Carlos Ghosn without a lawyer in the room. So they understand some of the strings they can pull. But yes, January 11th is the next date to be looking for. If there are no additional charges that are brought forward at that point, Carlos Ghosn can at least request bail.
Hi, I'm Joanna Bersecci, and thank you for watching. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thank you for watching.